Correct.
And seeing it all happen seeing the way it's happened, the way it all has in the last 3 years, I mean, if it's not a kick up the arse for everybody to say, hey, wake up and remember yourself, well, I don't know what is, because that's what's happening.
The simplicity of the solution is amazing, and that people don't yet still understand the solution is equally perplexing. I find that it almost doesn't matter how much you actually describe the solution. There will be people who will insist upon saying people don't talk enough about solutions because they want what I find that they want, and let's see if you agree with this, Max. People want literally to be told a very specific task to do. It's like, I find that it's very like learning and teaching computing technology. In my How to Become the True Media seminar, I do not focus on individuated single tasks to perform. Yes, you will have to do that. That will be required, right? But if you do not first understand the conceptual idea, the tasks are meaningless, and they could change on a dime. They could change at will. So the thing is, you have to first understand the conceptual idea of the underlying why. Why are you doing this? How is this advancing the cause of what you say that you want to achieve? And I find it amazing that so many people in the freedom community don't understand that what people like you and I have been discussing since day one is the solution. They just don't hear in their minds, listen, you, Jim, go and do this actual thing, and, go here to this place or say this thing. It's like they're waiting to be commanded, to be instructed like that, when the solution is think differently. Come to the correct understanding mentally, and then speak out about it to others. And the tasks that you choose to do that through are your own business. But get the conceptual idea and then implement it. Your take on that, Max?
Well, yeah, people are programmed into thinking that there's this certain process they've got to go through. Like they've got to fill out a form, or they've got to vote for someone, or they've got to go and follow someone, or they've got to subscribe to something and send them funds, and then they'll get a newsletter to tell them that the world has changed.
Right.
Oh, it's all good now. I don't have to worry about the government parasites ruining the world now. I can go back to my everyday mundane existence that I've done for my whole life. I don't have to change one single thing about myself. But I got a letter from Mark Passio last week that said it's safe to go outside now, so I'm good. That seems to be the approach people have. And they're programmed into blame games and this hero sort of mentality as well. You look at action movies. There's always the lone hero who goes out there and saves the world, and we live vicariously through his journey, and we don't have to do anything to save the world because Spider-Man just did it, and that is a pressure relief valve for us as we go through the movie and all this sort of stuff. And we look at all the problems and the rabbit holes we go down. Okay, it's the Jews, it's the Jesuits, it's the Satanists, it's the Freemasons, it's everybody. And if I point my finger at them and we get angry enough at them and we make them all disappear, the whole world will change without me having to change my perspective or do anything. And the question is, like I said before, what makes you ever think you needed rules to begin with? It's all of this programming that we've set, that's been set in place for your whole life, that you just never really understood yourself. The perfect example I've got of this is I've used this story quite often lately, is an old man that I saw on the beach, in Venice Beach, 85 years old, sitting there crying. And I said, what's the problem? Why are you crying? And he said, because I just realized I could have done this 70 years ago, but I did all this other stuff. I thought the system meant something. I thought it was real. I thought I had to have a house, have a white picket fence, have this car, and get to this level on the social ladder and do all these things that the society gives us to do. They give us all these things we've got to measure ourselves by, all these designated enjoyment zones to go to. Of course, if you haven't got your jab and you can't scan your QR code, you can't go to our designated enjoyment zone. So you can't do anything else because you don't know how to be you and just live your life in the forest, all this sort of stuff. But this guy's saying he did all these things, got a corporate business, had all this stuff, had a wife, a beautiful business, all these things. But all he really wanted to do was sit on the beach. And he realized that through all the stuff that he'd done, he never found himself. He missed out on himself. He missed out on the one thing he came here to do, which was to be who he was. And we don't do that because we're given all this stuff that we're told this is what you need to be. But they're not our ideas. These are other people's concepts of what they think we should be to fit into their system. So their system can just keep going and doing what it's doing, which is getting tighter and tighter and tighter and destroying everything it means to be you and taking everything it means to be you from you. So that soon you're going to need permission to choose what colour clothing you wear, for God's sake. It's ridiculous where they're taking it. And the solution is to remember who and what you are. Remember what you came here for. And realise the people that are ruling you are just people, just like you. You know, you get some guy, but he puts on a fancy suit and he writes all this rubbish on paper. And he said, well, now I've written it on paper, you've got to do it. Because this other guy, this friend of mine who's got a fancy suit on, he put a rubber stamp on it. So now it means something. Now it's truth. Now it's law. So now you've got to walk between these lines. And if you don't, I'm going to get this other guy to put you in a cage. How did that work out? You know, that's the system that we got. And why would we think that these people are our rulers? They're not. You know, government, if it's anything, it's people we employ to manage infrastructure for us in a responsible manner. So the garbage gets picked up and all this sort of stuff, because we've been coerced into living in these ridiculous things called cities, you know, which turns us all into truckitarians. So we're all completely dependent upon the system. No one can fend for themselves. No one's got any life skills. Everyone's living by conveniences. And so they're so scared of change, so scared of actually having to stand up and say, I have value, because then they might not be able to go to the supermarket and they don't know how to grow a seed. They don't know how to do anything. You know, even with the trades, and I could go on for hours and hours, you know, you become a plumber or you become a mechanic or a carpenter or whatever. Why not all of them? Like, you go and do a trade, you spend 3 to 4 to 7 years learning how to do one thing that you can learn how to do in 2 months, and then you can go and learn how to do another 100 different things so we can all do everything. You know, that's the way life used to be.
They have us,
and why is it now? I mean,
they have us so separated from the natural world. That's the main thing. We're literally cut off from the natural world. And everybody is living in a realm of constructs, of constructural ideas in the mind and beliefs, rigid, hardened belief systems that do nothing to serve who we are, that do nothing to advance us, to do nothing to help us to learn and grow in consciousness. And in effect, what the whole system has done, it has strangled possibility. The destruction of freedom is equated to the total destruction of what we believe even is possible, let alone what the system allows the possibility of developing and unfolding. When it cuts down that possibility and cuts it off and strangles it, that is literally the definition of the destruction of human freedom. And that's really where we are societally. We're in that state of total destruction of possibility, and that is what ultimately creates slavery. And people still believe to this day that somehow is moral, because they somehow believe that it must be that way or there'd be chaos. It's amazing that this many people are still hardened into this religious belief that authority is legitimate and that it's somehow moral, and it's not exactly what you described. A person issuing commands, another person rubber stamping the commands, another person saying, I'll beat their skull in if they don't obey the command, and they can't see that that's violence.
Yeah. No, that's called government, Mark. They're doing it to help us because they care. They've got to keep the world a safe place. Keep you safe from yourself, brother. See what they're doing, and like strangling, what you say, strangling all human potential. You imagine Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo or one of these, Nikola Tesla, anyone being born into one of today's schools and trying to actually express themselves? It's a joke. It's a complete joke. And that's why people can't see the solution, because the solution is them. But the problem is that they've lost so many life skills. Like I said, everybody's truckitarians. They live off the food trucks. They don't know how to think for themselves. They never had parents. I mean, they never left their parents. You know, it's in Western culture, we don't have any coming-of-age sort of ceremonies. That's something I find fantastic about being in Mexico here, is that when the kids turn 15, they have a quinceanera or a quinceanero. If you're a quinceanera, you're a girl, you've now become a woman. You've got to start taking responsibility for yourself. Don't go out and start sleeping around because things are going to happen. You've got to start thinking like an adult now. And the same with the boys, they have a quinceanero. Now that you're 15 years old, you've got to start thinking manly thoughts. You've got to start and put all those childish things behind and realize you're getting out into a real world where you can be taken advantage of, so you need to learn how to be a man. We don't have anything like that in the West. So we leave our parents, we go to school, the school teachers become our parents, we leave school, the government becomes our parents. No one can think for themselves, and they're too scared of actually operating on their own. That's the problem that we're facing. Even when we point out the corruption of the system and tell people what the solution is, no, they want someone to point the finger at. They want someone to hate, someone they can go on, because that's what the movies tell them you've got to do. That's what all the adventure novels tell them they've got to do. No, you've got to form the posse, and you go out and you lynch them. And then what do? You got this big power vacuum. Don't you just get on with your life? Oh, we need to tell these politicians and convince them to let us get on with our lives. No, just get on with your life. You just do the right thing in all that you do. It's pretty simple. There's only one law: do no harm. And don't comply with any legislation which causes you to do harm or causes you to step outside your moral compass. It's pretty simple. Like you always say, Mark, don't tolerate wrong behaviour. It's quite simple. What's a human right? It's a human in right behaviour, which is the opposite of a human in wrong behaviour. And when everything this system does coerces you into acting in wrong behaviour so that people suffer, well, I think I see a solution here, you know. Well, it's mind-boggling that the solution is so simple that people can't see the forest for the trees. I mean, I saw this when I was 4 or 5 years old. When I said to my mother, why can't we live in the forest? And she said, because we don't own the land. And I went, what do you mean own the land? How can you own the land? You know, why is all these people starving around the world when I see food in all the supermarkets every night and nobody's eating? Right. Why aren't these people eating it? Why does everybody have to pay to be alive? What happened? You know, I was asking this of my parents when I was 4 or 5 years old. You know, so I mean, it's fascinating that people can't see the solution, and we've kind of got to this point of dare I say, spiritual bankruptcy of generally the human race. It's got to this point that something like this kind of had to happen.
That is where we're at.
If this doesn't wake up,
that's where we are at. We're at spiritual.
We're virtually culling ourselves through spiritual bankruptcy.
Yes. You know, people not only cannot see, unfortunately, what the very elegant and simple solution is, but they are constantly attacking people for not somehow putting out the solution that they think should be put out. Like, you know, you're not talking about this, or you're not making this the main focus of your talk. You know, it's like they actually believe that, you know, their little area that they've looked into and that they've become an expert in to get some street cred in whatever social circle they walk in is what's really going to free us. What's really going to free us is to make common sense, objective morality a completely common sense idea in the entire world, where everybody knows it as surely as they know their own name and aligns their behavior to it and doesn't step outside of the boundaries of those moral laws of creation. And it's not that difficult. If immoral behavior is not taken by human beings because no amount of bribe or money can be offered to them to do the immoral behavior. In other words, our measure of success has to be how many people are refusing immoral behavior regardless of the reward that is promised if they do it. So if you ask yourself, look at the world and tell me how many people are saying, even if I'm offered millions and millions and millions of dollars to go into the police force and take away people's rights as soon as someone commands me to do it, even if I'm paid millions and millions and millions of dollars to go into the military and maim or kill people the minute that I'm commanded to do it, whether it's morally correct or not. How many people are saying, no matter the reward, no matter the amount of money offered, no matter the social status offered, I will not behave and allow my body to be used as an instrument to do immoral behaviors, no matter what the reward offered to me is in the physical domain? How many people are stepping outside of those positions? How many people are quitting those positions? That's my measure of success. Max, what would you say? Would you say that that's a fair or accurate measure of success? Or how do you look at how we are actively either becoming successful or slipping further into failure? What is your gauge or your dynamic that you measure in order to attempt to ascertain that?
Well, I mean, like you say, I mean, how many people are prepared to take that challenge? I mean, personally, I won't step outside my moral compass for anything. That's why I try never to do commerce or anything like that in anything that I do. I mean, I know it's necessary. We live in a commercial world. But I just try to always not have that a focus and just say what I mean and mean what I say. But that's one of the huge problems, is that people aren't prepared to do that. They get caught in this system that they think is real, and the system isn't real. Even the whole concept that you need money to pay to be alive, and that having lots of money means something. I mean, sure, it can create some sort of ease in your life, I suppose. But, there's greater things than that.
People always say, if someone is faced with the choice of providing food and comfort for their own family.
Excuse me for 1 second, Martin. I'll let you talk for 1 minute. I've got to go and get this door because nobody's here, and I'm
absolutely.
I'll be right back.
Understood. No problem, Max. What I want to ask the viewing audience to consider, and I'll repeat it when Max comes back, is people constantly say, well, you can't ask a human being to say to their own family, we might have to go through extremely hard financial times and possibly not even have food on the table some nights, to cease doing a job and behaviors that they themselves truly know to be morally wrong, and that are objectively morally wrong whether they know that they are or not. Yes, I can ask of that. Yes, you can ask them to do that. Yes, they should do that. What is worse? To allow your own family to suffer, to not do something wrong to another person. So, Max, what I'm generally asking people is, do they think it is worse for, let's say a person is a soldier and doing very harmful things, or let's say they are a cop and they're being asked to do extremely immoral behaviors, okay, and shut down rights of people that they don't have the right to shut down, or to jail them for things that the state says that they did that is a wrong that isn't actually a wrong in matter-of-fact reality and nature, that was within their rights to do, but they're being punished for doing it because the state said you can't. What is the worst moral choice? What is the worser or the more immoral choice when it comes on the spectrum of morality? Is it to allow your family that is profiting from the evil that you're involved in to not have what it once had, and to live a lesser quality of life and continue and not continue the evil, or to make a choice to say, I'm considering my family's base physical comfort needs more important than someone else's rights, than someone else's freedom, than someone else's lives and property, etc. And I'm going to choose to stay engaged in acts of evil and acts of complete immorality and violence and complicity with violence, just not to allow my own to go into some form of physical creature discomfort and suffer lesser quality of life. Which is the more moral choice? Which is the less moral choice? I would say it's always the less moral choice to continue to do harm and to continue to violate other people's rights, rather than to say to one's own family, we cannot profit from this. We cannot prosper from this. We cannot live a life of comfort and assuredness and full bellies and a nice family and nice clothing and a car in the garage, while the thing that enabled that is complicity with an evil system and using my own body, my own physical vehicle for the expression of my consciousness as the vehicle to enact that evil out into the world. I say that that's always the worst immoral choice, and it would be a far more moral choice to put upon your own family, your own wife, your own children, your own husband, your own grandchildren, etc., so forth, hardship and possible suffering, rather than willfully and openly and deliberately conduct evil with your own body. Max, your take on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the order followers and their. I mean, and the thing is as well with the creature comforts and all the thing that they think they have. This is what they think life is about. They can't understand what it means to be human. They've got this measure of reality, and they don't want to go outside that. If they haven't got gold-plated door handles and silver spoons and all, they don't want all this other stuff that the peasants have, And they literally view people as like a farm, like they're running an ant farm. Now, the mind of a psychopath is very different to the mind of a normal person. But in all these situations, I mean, sure, you've got the guys at the top who are raking in millions of dollars, the generals and the politicians and the leaders who do all these things, put all these orders in place. But it's the order followers in the end that carry out all these deeds. And their families' heads are on the chopping block as well. I mean, unfortunately, many of these guys, they grew up as, bullied kids at school and they haven't had good relationships. And many of them don't have good relationships with their families or good relationships with their wives. A lot of them are single, so they don't really know a lot about family. They don't know a lot about what it means to be loved, to live in a nurturing environment, a lot of these people. And that's why they've gone through the whole hippie revolution in the 60s and got all this free love happening, got all these single mothers happening, so you got all these parentless children running around everywhere they've created this whole thing. It's been years in the making. And these people, and they bring them into the police force and these military organisations, and they give them IQ tests. And if they score over 102, like in Australia, if you score over 102 IQ on the aptitude test in the police force, they won't let you in. You're too intelligent. They want you just smart enough to follow the orders and not really think about what you're doing too much. And if you've got a bit of a chip on your shoulder and you don't mind being a bit of a thug, well, all the better. And what we've seen in the whole COVID this whole scamdemic that they've been running the last 3 years, there's been hundreds, if not thousands, of police have quit the force in Australia because they're disgusted in what the police force has become. And, I mean, this is good in a form of protest in some way, but ultimately these guys, this means all the good, anybody with any sense of morality is actually leaving the police force. It would have been better had these people turned on their commanding officers when the orders were given and said, that's an illegal order, and I'm going to do my duty, and I'm going to arrest you, and I'm going to remove you from a position of power, and I'm going to have this whole thing investigated. That's what we really need them to be doing because, I mean, a lot of these guys who've got any sense of morality at all, I mean, and let's face it, some of these guys, they might not be too smart, but I'm sure there's many cops who joined the force because they saw cop shows on TV and they wanted to be a cop because they figured they're the good guys, and they really wanted to go in and help the world against crime because they don't understand where crime comes from. It's all manufactured. If you want to create a crime, you just create a new law. Every time you create another law, it makes something illegal, you've created a new crime. Oh, my God, look at the crime figures. They're double last year. We need more police. We need more laws. So why are the crime figures double? Because you created double the laws. Now it's illegal to walk in the park on a Sunday. It's illegal to do this. It's illegal to fish down the beach. It's illegal to sit in the park. It's illegal to wear red, whatever. So now there's oh, my God, look at the crime figures. That's how they do it. When Obama brought in Obamacare, he put in 180,000 new laws or something. That's 180,000 new crimes that he created.
Exactly.
That's how you create
when
crime.
There's only, as you said, one law. Don't initiate harm to your other fellow beings. That's it. It's that simple.
That's it. That's it. And how come everything they write down and call law, because the guy in the suit and the rubber stamp and the little process, it goes against that. And yet they dare to call that law? How does that work, So people can't see all this stuff. So, I mean, that's why they do what they do, Mark. And that's what spiritual bankruptcy looks like. When you've got these order followers wearing these uniforms and these sigils all over them, going out there and just brutalising people because their commanding officer told them they should do so, because it's written in the book here that this bottom line's got to be met. It's crazy. When you look at our society, it's absolutely insane. There's no way that any sane mind would have even come up with a society like this. And it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter with what they're doing with the smart grid and what this whole thing's been about, to roll us into this whole track and trace, QR code, digital currency, track everything, know every thought, everything you're doing, harvest all of you, not just your time and your space, but everything, put you in these little 15-minute cities that you're hearing about they want to create. So, it's just destroying human consciousness on all levels. And I see it as an opportunity to wake up. I mean, how hard are they going to push it before people suddenly stand up and say, oh, shit, I've got value. I actually have value. I'm worth something. I can actually do what I want to do. I can create with these hands. I can just go and do what I want to do. I've often said to people, if you throw yourself to the wind, you can ride it. And if you just go out and throw yourself into the world, you'll find incredible things. But we've been taught we can't do that. We've got to stay home. We've got to be dependent upon the city. We've got to do what we're told. And that's why people can't find a way out, because they want the instructions.
Right.
That's why they think we want the what's the solution? Why don't you and Mark tell us the solution? What do you mean the solution is me? That's how is that's new age rubbish. That's all airy fairy nebulous nothing. You're not telling me anything. What do I do? Where's the form I need to fill out? What movement can I get involved with that I can donate money to that's going to go and use the system itself to fight against the system?
You know how
it's your belief the system is real. That's the matrix. Why don't you just get on with your life?
You know how I word it to people? I ask them, describe at the most base fundamental level that you can, what is the nature of the problem? The nature of the problem is that there are many, 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 many people in our world that are willing to do immoral behaviors, and their behavior is out of alignment with morality. Now, if you accept that as the main premise, then why is that the case? What is the underlying factor that they're willing to do those behaviors? It is because they have fundamentally ingested into themselves, taken into their mind, wrong thoughts. They have believed things that they have thought that have been pushed upon them for their mental consideration, for their thought process, that simply are not true. They are lies, they are deceit, they are not in alignment or congruity with objective morality and even objective reality. Yet they are rigidly believed in a dogmatic way by the majority of human beings. So the problem is immoral behavior. The underlying causal factor for that problem is totally incorrect religious thought. And when I say religious, it doesn't mean Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, etc. It can be those things, but it is not limited to those. One great work network content creators, I think it was Logan Hart, said something to the effect of, the most dangerous religions are the ones that most people never think of as a religion. That's what we're talking about as religion. Wrong moral thought. The belief in authority, the belief in government, the belief that it doesn't matter what the action was, it matters what the intent was instead of the harm that resulted from the action. The idea that if government commands it, that's different than if the average person commands it, etc. The belief that if you're feeding your family and providing for your family, it's okay for you to do immoral things to other people because you can't let them starve or go hungry or be uncomfortable. All of this wrong, immoral justification for absolute immoral behavior and violence. That's the underlying reason. Wrong mental thought. So then extrapolate logically. See, it's like when people say that they can't hear the solution in what we're saying, we've been saying these things, and it's a very simple, elegant, logical extrapolation that their mind is unfortunately simply perhaps not advanced enough. They have not engaged in actual logical thought processes for so long that their mind may have been worked into a synaptic pattern that perhaps they cannot actually reason like this. And that's why they need to hear it over and over and over and over. But the answer then becomes, if you extrapolate logically, that if a lot of minds were hammering on that one mind over the course of their youth until they became an adult with wrong thought, the only way to possibly reverse that condition in that individual's mind is for a whole lot of people to speak the truth out into the world such that they are going to hear that truth, and that's going to bombard the mind and the synaptic pathways and compete with the wrong thoughts until the voice of the truth massively outweighs the voice of the lie coming at them and entering them and being ingested into their own mind. And that's going to break down the wrong thought and instill the correct thought. How anybody cannot see that, and how anybody can think that it is possibly ever going to work any differently than that, is sad to me. And this is what I feel the great work truly is. It's speaking out to others, not only to give them the understanding of the problem and what the solution is, but to help other people to understand that they need to step into that solution, that the solution is them in the form of putting information out into the world, because not every human being will hear me, not every human being will hear Max Igan, not every human being will accept it from me or will accept it from Max. You yourself have to influence other people. You have to put your voice out into the world, because you will influence others that I may not be able to influence and Max may not be able to influence. You may have a gift in your own way. You may reach certain people that we can't. You may resonate with others that we don't resonate with. Max, your take on all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. People need to be their own solutions, and they need to reach the people around them. You know, like I said before, the problem is people's loss of life skills, like basic life skills. Even more so, as much as we do need the technology, a lot of the skills people have lost with technology, they've lost the skill of communication on a real level with the people around them. They're scared. They're literally scared of what it would mean to just walk out into the world and just live. You know, and go and build a teepee and go fishing. Like I said, that guy just wanted to sit on the beach for most of his life. You know, I've said before, you know, the system's getting so dystopian, and soon you're going to need biometric ID and all of this stuff, even to log online. You know, do you have the skills that we had 100 years ago, where you can just walk into the forest with a knife and a piece of rope and know that you can make something, you can survive, you can build yourself a fishing rod, you can hunt, you can do what you need to do to get by. We don't have those skills anymore. People, they're truckatarians. They go to the supermarket. They do what they're told. Even when they want a solution, they want someone to tell them how the solution works. Show me your plan. Show me what the world looks like after we implement your plan. And I want to see every single step of it along the way. I want to see all the logistic support, all this sort of stuff. Because they think that way. They think in their left brain. They think the way the system is trained them to think. Like you say, they're all thinking wrong thoughts. They've never been taught about themselves. You know, some of the work that I did a couple of years ago, where I was finding out that there used to be a root language on the earth, which was the basis of Hungarian, Magyar. And it was spoken by the Incas, it was spoken by Polynesians and Melanesians, most of South America. Even the Australian Aboriginals spoke derivations of Magyar. Magyar is a language that has 32 letters in the alphabet. Like in Hungarian, you can express every single nuance of human emotion. In Hungarian, there are 50 different words for snow, because there are 50 different types of snow. With the English-speaking world, what we've got, they've taken our... I mean, we know, I know what I feel inside, and I have so much trouble trying to convey that to the world at large because of my limited understanding, my limited ability to be able to, because I speak English, because the words don't exist in English for me to convey what I want to say. So I have to get out in the world, I have to try to be that person, put myself out there on the public stage the way I've done, say what I can in the way I can, but always inspiring people to ask questions and to look within. Most of the shows that I've done, I don't try to bring you solutions. I don't try to bring you the answer. I try to get you to ask the question, because when you ask the right question, the answer will present itself to you. I have people write to me and say, Max, I think I know the answer to those questions. I already know the answer. I just wanted you to ask the question, because real truth cannot be told. People won't listen to the truth. Real truth must be realised. So you have to encourage people to ask the questions that will help that light bulb go off in their mind. So think about what it would be like if we had our root language that was still here and we could express every single nuance of human emotion. We knew stuff about reality that doesn't exist in our language to be able to convey. And when you look at what they've done us, the number they've done on us, Mark, it's incredible how far they've divided us from what we should be. You know, and that loss of language is a really big part of it, I think. That's why you've got to feel the truth, and you've got to know who and what you are. That's the solution. Everyone wants, like I said, they want instructions. But it's you. If you can find yourself and find your own divinity, see the beauty in yourself, look within you, and even look into the shadow. Because when you look into the shadow, you don't become the shadow. What you do is you find the light in yourself, and you realise that if you cast light on that shadow, the shadow flees. You can't do anything in the face of light. And the reason the shadow exists in the world is because people won't shine the light on it. They're scared of the way it makes them feel emotional.
That's right.
when I look at that bad stuff. It awakens all this terrible stuff within me. Well, all information is just light. People are they have a problem with processing certain forms of light. And so because of the emotional state it makes them feel, the way it makes them feel, they don't realize how easy they can heal that darkness simply by acknowledging the darkness is there. You know, it's a difficult thing. I mean, it's such a difficult thing. So I think in that situation, consciousness being what it is, like I said, we've brought this whole scamdemic and this spiritual bankrupt state that we're in. It's got to come to this head, because there's got to be a way for spirit, the divine, God, whatever you want to call it, to get your consciousness and squeeze it so hard that you're just that light bulb's going to pop open. It's going to happen. You're going to wake up. A lot of people are going to fall by the wayside. But in that moment of you, in that moment of that spiritual growth of yourself, you're just going to have this huge experience, and you're going to see what the answer is. And the answer is you, and it's always been you. Simply change your perspective and change the way you interact with the world, and the world changes. We can heal the world in a single day if people just had that epiphany. Which is what I've tried to do.
It doesn't have to be hundreds or thousands of years. I hear people saying, "Oh, it was thousands of years for the human race to be put in this condition. It'll take thousands of years to get out of it." And it's not true. It's something that, this is just a belief that people have. Again, as you said, we can change it very quickly because it's just a shift in thinking. It is an epiphany. It is a paradigm shift, a paradigm change in the way one perceives things. And shadow work is a gigantic part of that. As you said, if people are not willing to look at the dark aspect of themselves, the ignorant aspect of themselves, the lazy aspect of themselves, the cowardly aspect of themselves, right? The thing that doesn't care enough. There's something inside of us all that says, don't bother. It's too hard. You can't. We have this inner voice, this programming, this virus, whatever you want to call it. In ancient and in indigenous languages, they called this Wetiko. Wetiko is the thing that says, you're not good enough. You're beaten. You're not smart enough. You'll never be able to do this. And it can become a true thing. It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy if we listen to that demonic voice. If we listen to that voice that diminishes us. The shadow is the dark, negative, uncaring, unintelligent, ill-informed, ignorant, apathetic, cowardly, lazy side of us. But as you said, if we shine light on that and we ask, what do you think you're getting by continuing these practices? What do you think? How do you think you're advancing yourself or anything? Why would you make the willful choice to stay in that state of darkness and in shadow when, if you receive the truth of the matter, and if you know what's really going on, no one who truly, truly knows that the condition of humanity is actual slavery, and that the people in charge are sick, twisted, satanic psychopaths, and then does nothing to end that condition, does nothing to improve that condition. No one can truly know, truly possess that knowledge and not act. The people who are doing that have this existential doubt in their mind as a result of not engaging with the shadow inside. They're not doing the shadow work to quiet the mind, sit with the self. Quiet the mind, sit with the self, and then pose the question, why have I not gotten upon the battlefield with 100% of my soul? With 100% of my soul, have I not charged headlong into the battle? What has made me apathetic enough not to do that? What has kept me ignorant enough not to do that? Most of all, why am I still so cowardly and lazy that I have not actually done that? This is the shadow work. The shadow work is to ask oneself those questions. As you said, the questioning process, the asking of questions is what brings all of that out of people and makes them have that aha moment, that spiritual satori, or that instant awakening that they realize, wow, this is what is required of me, not of another, not of someone else, not of Mark Passio, not of Max Igan, not of whoever, Alex Jones, David Icke, Michael Tessarion, Jordan Maxwell, etc. We are talking about you. What is going to be required for you yourself to say, I must contribute my own work upon the battlefield of life in the spiritual warfare that we are in, because if your effort is not added to the spiritual warfare effort, it is weaker as a result. That's it. If you're not contributing your energy to the side of good, then you are at least a cowardly observer, sitting back, watching other people wage the war and not engaging in it, which is just about as bad as saying, I don't care whether evil wins because I can't be bothered to actually truly lift a finger on my own and get involved in this battle. Max, your take on that and people's general apathetic mindset, and most of all their laziness, their cowardliness, their inaction. What can we do to get them to see that their own action is required and it's not to be left to anyone else? No one else has this in hand. You must act yourself.
Yeah, well, that's what I've been trying to inspire people to do for a long time. You know, people. The problem, people aren't even looking for spiritual enlightenment. They're not looking for any spiritual answer to life or looking to explore themselves through life. They're just trying to get by. They're just trying to put food on the table, keep a roof over their heads, you know, because that's the society that we've created. And the more and more dystopian it becomes, the more they think if they just comply, it'll all go away. And the more they lose time for any spiritual pursuits because they're so busy trying to keep up with the lifestyle that they think they need to have. If people can't just go and put a teepee up on the beach and go fishing and sleep when they're tired and do what they want to do, they can't throw themselves to the wind. They don't know how to. They don't know how to think without the system. They don't know how to think for themselves. And that's the problem. And even a lot of people who listen to people like you and I mean, it's all very interesting for them and they know there's a big conspiracy, but so many people sort of view it as the spy novel version of reality. They just like to hear the next installment of what the bad guys are doing. So you got so many disinformation people in the so-called truth movement as well that are always telling you about the latest false flag or the latest this or the latest that and what the white hats are doing and, you know, all this sort of crap that they keep people. There's been people telling me that alien invasion and like they're going to announce the alien interventions here. Like they were telling back in 1970s, we've been waiting for disclosure.
Right.
It's imminent. It's imminent. All this stuff's imminent. The white hats are in there. Trump's going to save the day. All these people are coming to save you. You don't have to do anything. Just keep eating popcorn
right.
and listening to the spy novel version of reality, right. but never applying yourself to it. Never applying yourself to it because you don't have to, because there are people in there looking after it for you. And again, that voice, you couldn't do it anyway. Just let these right. guys do it. These guys know more than you. That's why you listen to them on the radio, because they're so intelligent. You know, they're gurus and all this sort of crap. That's what I've tried to convey to people. The important part about my message, the most important part about my message is that I'm a social misfit. I'm a guitar player who used to smoke weed for years. I come from Adelaide. I didn't even finish high school. I'm not anybody special. That's the whole point. Right. You don't have to be somebody special to actually have an opinion and have your voice heard. You know, if people would just do that, realize that we're all special.
That's right.
There's people with different attributes and all sorts of stuff, but everybody's got a voice. I've often said every problem that we face in the world, doesn't matter, or any good thing, any good thing that's happened or any bad thing that's happened in this world that was created by humankind, ultimately came from the spark of idea that existed within the mind of a single individual.
Of course.
Had this idea, let's do this shit. And all these other people went along with it, and it turned into something really good or something really bad. But everything that we're facing came from a spark of an idea and a single mind. You can do that. Doesn't matter if you're in a wheelchair. You could be all fucked up. Right. You just can't get through life. You haven't got the physical attributes to do this, but you're really cluey, and you got an idea, and people like you. And you could just say something, and that's going to take off like a wildfire. Everybody can do that. But we're taught, no, not you. You can't do that. You got to think between these lines and go to the school and don't think outside the box and do all this shit. And then go out there and you've got to succeed in life according to our parameters and don't ever find yourself along the way. And unfortunately, a lot of people aren't looking for themselves. They're just looking to survive. They're looking for that peer group pressure and that status. They don't want to be smarter than the people around them. Then they want to go and hang at the club and play pool with the boys. No one wants to hang around with someone smarter than they are who's talking about all this conspiratorial stuff. Let's just talk about doing up the old Ford motor and fixing up the Cadillac and riding our Harleys and going shooting on the weekend, you know?
They're taught to be average. They're taught to be
mediocre.
And
they're rewarded for being mediocre. Yeah. They're rewarded for being mediocre all the way through high school now. That's why everybody gets a star. There's no one excels. Yep. Everyone graduates at every grade that they go through. Taught mediocrity.
And then if they're taught that...
Imagine Tesla or...
Right.
You mentioned Tesla or Michelangelo.
In today's world, imagine. Yeah. These people are taught
they'd be suicidal by the time they're 13.
To be mediocre, and then they start believing it themselves. They start becoming these underachieving people / people who don't believe that they're powerful, when in fact they could be immensely powerful, incredibly powerful. You know, I love your take on people watching the spy movie of reality. You know, they're watching it like as if it's playing out on the screen, and they're not directly, intimately involved. If it's not it's not actually part of what is affecting their lives and the lives of those who will come after them.
You know. They are. It's like they're watching it. Well, tuning into you or me or Jeff Berwick or coming to an Acapulco. It's like they're watching a James Bond movie, and it's the evil villain, and there's the heroes in there. I can't wait to see what happens.
Waiting for what happens next instead of making it happen.
If you actually participated. If you actually participated, it would go the way we want it to actually go. That's the point.
You know what I love, Max?
You know? The point is that we're a bunch of nobodies. We're doing this because everybody is somebody. What don't you get about this, everybody?
You know what I love? You know, I love the people who are all about, where's all the new stuff? This is the big thing. You've said this for years. Where's the new material, Mark? Where's all the fresh new stuff that I've never heard before, I've never seen before? There's no such thing. It's the same state of existence.
I want the next chapter of the spy novel, exactly. Mark. What happens in part 2?
Exactly. Yeah? It's slavery that has been slavery, that is going to continue to be slavery until we do something to change it. That's the beginning of the book. That's the meat of the book. That's the end of the book, and that's the appendix of the book. And if people haven't gotten that yet and you don't understand, there's nothing new coming. We have to, in order to create any new possibilities or circumstances, we have to end the condition called slavery on this planet first. And that's what people don't want to do, and that's why they're constantly asking for what's new that I can learn. You don't need to learn anything new. You need to act. And that's the problem, is people aren't taking any real world action.
The new stuff you're going to have to learn is how to program the QR code on your cashless shopping trolley, because you wouldn't pay attention to the world. Okay, there'd be plenty of new stuff: QR codes, biometric scans,
brain chips,
online, no flying, your 15-minute zone that you want to live in, all this sort of shit. That's all the new stuff, because you're not participating in all the stuff we've been trying to tell you for the last 20 years.
Ankle bracelets that'll shock you when you step outside of your 15-mile radius. Let's not leave that out, you know.
Yeah. That's what's coming if people don't stand up and start speaking out about this and making their voice heard and realizing that they have value. I mean, that's all we've ever tried to do, is get people to remember who and what they are. That's been my whole message the whole time. If you go and listen to my shows back from 2008, it's the same message. I've been saying the same thing, packaged a million different ways, hoping to reach a million different minds, even if it's one at a time, because I need you guys to wake up, because I don't particularly want to be a slave anymore. And I can't do it on my own. We can't do it on our own. And that's the problem, is that the sleeping masses, you're just dragging us off the cliff with them.
Unfortunately.
Because everyone thinks the system's real. Yeah, and that's like you're saying, when there's a solution, what's the solution? Where's the march going to be to? You know, what form do I fill out? Who are we voting in? What's the movement, you know? Oh, my Lord, you know? Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. There's the solution right there. Do you know that guy? That's the question I ask people. Who are you? Tell me who you are. Oh, well, I'm a baker. No, that's what you do. Who are you? Well, they can't answer. It freaks them out. They freaks them out. They've never really found themselves. They think they are their little part of the system, and somehow by using that, they're going to change things without ever finding themselves. It's like they're living in a mirror world. People are living in a mirror, they're looking in a mirror, and they're operating within the mirror, and they're not noticing the world around them. It's a crazy mentality.
It's a crazy form of ego identification, as I refer to it. And it's all about finding the value when you wake up to who and what you really are and what your true purpose is. It's about finding ourselves. That's the psychology that we have to learn. We have to learn about what we really are at our nature, at our fundamental level of nature and consciousness. And we have to stop identifying with the roles that we are given. We have to stop identifying with the jobs that we do, with the affiliations that we have. Ultimately, it's not being about a member of any group. It's about simply changing your own perspective and aligning it with that which is correct morally, with that which is morally right. And then use your willpower not to allow your behavior to do any of the things that you consciously know are morally wrong. That is the solution. People don't understand that freedom is hinged upon that law. There is a law that governs human freedom. The amount of freedom in any given society is going to be directly proportional to the amount of aggregate moral behavior of all the individuals in that society that comprise that society. That's the law. That is the law of freedom. A law governs freedom like it governs every other dynamic of creation. Nothing is ungoverned by law. As the Hermetics said, what is perceived as random chance is simply a law unrecognized as yet. That's all it is. Everything is governed by law. Yes.
Absolutely. You should be the best person you can possibly be. That's the way to change the world. Something I've been encouraging lately, a question people should ask themselves every day. Are you the type of friend that you would want to have as a friend? Not are you a good person, are you morally upright, or if you were really down and you really, really needed a friend, could you turn to yourself? Could you be that friend to someone? Are you the type of person that you would really value your friendship? And I always try to be that guy. I try to make everybody I come across, I try to make their life a little bit easier because they met me. Because I think that's what rubs off. That's what changes people. Be the best person you can possibly be. And realize there's only one of us here. If you really want to get godly about it, you think of everybody as being a thought in the mind of God. Just one single consciousness fractured so it can experience itself subjectively, like Bill Hicks said. So, when you meet, so that's why I finish every radio show with In Lakesh. I am another yourself. We are each other. We are reflections of each other. What I do to you, I do to me. So I will treat you the way I would be treated. I'll treat you and I'll be the best person I can to you. I won't let you take advantage of me. I won't let you hurt me. I won't let you do anything like that. But I'll treat you with the respect I would want and I deserve. I will treat everybody that, and I'll be the best person I can for you. And if I can make your life a little easier with a random act of kindness, then I'll do that every day to everybody that I meet. So if people could do that and be the best person they possibly can and be the best friend you could possibly be to every friend that you have, the world will reflect that back to you. And we would change the world so quickly, Mark. We really would. I mean, people just don't have any concept of what it really means to be human and morally uprighteous and morally upstanding, They don't understand even the concept of, with what we're facing, of what I call wholesome, righteous anger.
That's right.
In the face of what we're facing. I could stand up against these people, not because I hate them, but because I love me and because I love you and because I love life and I love people around me. And it's the right thing to do to stand up against this. And if you're not angry in the face of this, well, are you made of wood? Because anger doesn't have to be focused on hate. It doesn't have to come from hate. I don't hate these people. I don't hate Klaus Schwab. I don't hate all the people that are doing all this stuff. I feel sorry for them more than anything because I can't imagine what it would be like to have a mind that psychopathic and that fearful of anyone doing anything that you don't want them to do, that you would need to control everybody and everything the way these people want to do.
Could you imagine being in that? Could you imagine being in that baby-fied? It's a baby-fied state. These are the least evolved among us, and we're letting them rule us out of fear. Imagine.
Exactly. So how can you hate them, though? How can you hate them? You can't. When you hate them, it just empowers them. I feel sorry for them, but I do what I do, and I stand up against them, and I say what I say out of love for life and love for what is right. And I do that. If I wasn't angry, I couldn't do it. I'm ferociously angry at what these people are doing, but it's wholesome, righteous anger, and it doesn't manifest in violence. It manifests in very, very positive dialogue that I put out to the world to try to encourage people to rediscover themselves. But if I wasn't angry, I wouldn't
Let's
do
talk
that,
about anger for a minute, because this is very important, and people really don't understand this, and many will not even understand what you're saying about what real, true, righteous anger is. People will say, Mark, how could you get so angry and say such vicious things? It's because I care about injustice taking place. If there is no justice, then I am robbed and stolen from. If justice is being robbed from another, I am being robbed and stolen from. If I am having injustice done to me, other people are having injustice done to them, and they are being robbed and stolen from. Who would just want to be degraded, robbed, and stolen from, and have their rights shut down, and not feel angry about it? I feel that I know people in my actual own life that I would not say are quote unquote friends, but are acquaintances and have been acquaintances, that I feel they are actually amputated emotionally from the ability to ever feel the emotion of anger. It has been instilled in them through mind control from the day that they were born, to such an extent that they actually bought into the notion somewhere in their youth when they were young that you are never to experience the emotion of anger for any reason, no matter how righteous it is or how much that anger is directed against injustice in your own life or in the world in general at large. And I feel there are many people in the world today that literally, very literally, in the synaptic pathways of the brain and in the neuropeptides that generate the feelings that we have that we call emotions, literally cannot ever feel anger. There are people in our own communities that are incapable of ever getting angry. I have found this to be true. I want to talk about how society attempts to instill that, and how the rulers of society don't want that righteous anger. Your take on that, of how we are really being bred not to be able to feel that righteous anger that you're talking about. That's what I think is really going on through mind control and social engineering and social conditioning, is they are trying to literally amputate that emotion out of people's psychological makeup.
Oh, absolutely. Breakdown of the family unit has been a big part of it. The mislabeling of the genders. I mean, and the destruction of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, both of them. You know, men have just been completely demasculinized. They're not allowed to get angry, to be fluffy and become more in touch with their feminine side. Women have got to become more in touch with their masculine side. So they're removing the nurturing ability from mothers, so they don't have that fierce, like, you know, mother lion protecting her cub. They don't have that. You know, you'd never mess with a mother or get between a mother and a child. Not so these days. Mothers these days are quite happy to transgender their child when it's too young to even know what its gender is, because they're turning their children into a fashion accessory rather than a family that they're growing. You know, so it's been done very, very deliberately, and the merging of the genders, and people just, we're incapable of anger. And all Prozac and all the stuff that they put is fluoride in the water, and, you know, all these things help. You're getting angry, well, a bit of Prozac and Zoloft and this sort of stuff should fix these issues. So you just function on an even keel. And you think about women and men who take these drugs and then have sex and have children. These drugs would already be into these kids. I mean, what are they doing to these kids' brains by even getting pregnant when they're on these drugs? So, you know, society has been chemically castrated and physically and emotionally and spiritually castrated over a series of generations for the last, like, probably since the 30s or 40s, you know. So, and it's got to the point that it has now, where people are just becoming these gender neutral, whatever they are, perfect for going into this virtual reality where they'll just be living in a mainframe and even working in a virtual world, and they're having everything harvested from them while they're living at home in a pod, in their little 15-minute zone. So, I mean, it's getting crazy. It's really getting crazy. And, people, I think a lot of it is the chemicals and the TV. And, again, with the movies and things people watch and ball games even, these are all pressure relief valves. People get a little bit pissed off about things. They go to the ball game, they watch their team win. It's all good. They feel great at the end of the day. If their team doesn't win, well, they have a right and beat up the guys from the other supporters of the other team. So it gets them off that way. So they're able to, expel all these things. If it wasn't for action movies and sports games, there probably would have been a revolution decades ago. And back in the old Roman days, they say give them gladiators, and you'll keep them happy forever. They just want blood sport and stuff that relieves that build up within them, so they can live vicarious through what they're watching.
Bread and circuses. It turned into football and beer. It's the same thing in the modern day.
Exactly. Bread and circuses. Yep. Yeah.
Here in Philadelphia, everybody's wired and all amped up about the Eagles game because they're in the NFC playoffs and stuff. Yeah. It's like I can't even believe that grown adults are this worried about a game, like a game that children play, and that people who...
Well, it's all the games, the election games, the TV games, the different TV stations people watch. I like Channel 9, I like Channel 7, I like these news anchors, I like those news anchors, I like this perspective, I like that perspective. It's all mind control, a whole lot. Different, voting for the Reds or the Blues, or different ball games, or different teams, different whatever. The war in Ukraine, who do I barrack for, Russia or Ukraine? Come on, folks, it's theatrics, it's ridiculous.
All orchestrated, controlled opposition. That's the dialectic. That's the dialectic to divide and conquer, to polarize people and get them warring with each other instead of realizing the slavery that they are in.
Works like a charm.
What I still find amazing is that these social engineers have actually convinced people that slavery is a moral condition and is required. And what kind of fearful individual, how much fear do you have to have in your heart and in your mind to believe that it's better to be enslaved and to condone the slavery of others rather than possibly have to deal with perhaps an existence where you might have to defend yourself against other immoral people if they don't want to learn and if they don't want to really bring their behavior into alignment with morality. Yes, go ahead.
They don't see it as slavery. They think you're an extremist. They don't see it as slavery. No, it's not. I'm not a slave. Well, because I've got to pay taxes and work and pay to be alive. No, I'm not a slave. I've got freedom of choice. I can go and buy 25 different flavoured bagels if I want. So I'm not a slave. I can buy a Chevrolet or a Ford, or I can go to the beach on a Sunday if I want. I'm free reign.
I tell people just stop paying the extorted property tax that is present everywhere, and find out how long it will take for armed thugs with guns to come and put you out of what you perceive to be your own property and home. And people, you notice no politician will touch the property tax issue, no matter what platform they're running on, no matter what party they're running on, no matter what their political persuasion is. They will never mention this one because that's the thing that fuels all of their other violence. They have to keep the violence going basically with people having to live someplace and therefore paying to live there, paying to keep armed thugs from not showing up with guns and taking what is rightfully theirs. When they're living in it, they're maintaining it, they acquired it rightfully, which is the definition of property. And then, I'm
not, you're breaking up.
Sorry, you're coming in pretty clear, but I'll repeat again. It's like people believe that they own what they claim that they own, and they don't, because it's just allowed for them to keep as long as they pay the extortion fee called a tax. And if they fail to pay that, armed thugs show up and will confiscate their so-called property. And this is the other thing. People don't even understand what property is or means. I went when I don't know if you remember back when the whole Wall Street protests were going on. They had them here in Philadelphia. It was called Occupy Philly. They did Occupy Wall Street. They did Occupy Philly here. I would go to these so-called protests, not to protest, but to talk to the protesters and try to wake them up to the understanding of objective morality and natural law and sovereignty and true human freedom. And I would ask them, simple questions like, do you like agree with a property tax? Do you think that people should have to pay to own something, to own a house? What if there's a television tax and you have to pay somebody a certain amount of money or they'll come in and take your TV, or a computer tax? Then how is it your property? If I have a shoes tax that I'm going to implement on somebody and say, you're going to pay me this much money per month, or I'm coming and I'm taking all of your shoes, you will not be allowed to own shoes unless you pay me this amount of money, which is arbitrary. I'll decide how much it is, and it doesn't matter whether you say that's prohibitively expensive and you can't afford it. I'm taking your shoes. Well, then they're not your property. They're my property, and I could take them anytime I want as long as I'm not receiving the extortion fee that I demand. And people would actually say to me at Occupy Philly, these people of a leftist communist/communist persuasion would say, I don't own anything. I don't believe in the concept of property or ownership. Could you imagine this? And I would say, well, what about your body? What if someone wants to put poison into your body? And I had people say, I'm not the owner of my body. And I said, well, then who is? Who the fuck is the owner of your own body? If you don't own your body, who owns it? And they're like, I don't accept the concept of ownership at all, including my body. I'm like, you're mentally ill. I would actually say this to other human beings' face, because this is how deranged the mind control has made another person. I said, you're mentally ill and you are owned, but you are correct. You're not your own owner. Someone else owns you, and you'll never meet them and you'll never know their name. And I had to actually say that to the face of several people at Occupy Wall Street. You're mentally ill and you are owned, but you are certainly owned by other people whose name you will never know. Imagine that that's where a bulk of humanity, a portion of humanity is at, in believing that they don't even own their own body. This is how disconnected from self we have become. And I'm not even talking about disconnection from the higher self. They're not even occupying the body. They're not present. They're elsewhere. They're gone from the house. They're out to lunch, as the saying goes. And, this is what we have to work to get people, in a reasonable, logical mindset to understand. If you don't own property, you are already a slave. Therefore, already right now, the condition is slavery, because there's no true property ownership. You don't own your car that's registered to the state. You don't own your house that's subject to property tax. If something can be taken from you if you don't pay somebody else, that isn't property. That is being held and used, but it is not owned. It is being held in trust for the state, and then the state could come in and take it at any time as soon as you stop complying. Why don't people have a sense of property? I feel like it's bad parenting. Parents never fully put and instilled inside the mind of the child that they are sovereign, that they own themselves, that what they put their effort and work into and the fruit of their labor is theirs, and they get to make the decision as to what they do with it, and nobody else should be able to come in and make that decision for them under the threat of violence and duress. Your take on that, Max?
Yeah, well, people, again, the whole concept of ownership of registration and all of this sort of stuff is the problem. You look at the Native Americans; they never believed anybody could own any part of the earth. They just moved where it was working, and they all did that. It's when because we've been put into these cities and we've been constructed our societies in this way, that this concept of ownership, whereby it's registration, that it's all got to be controlled by government, which means you've got to pay for it. They kind of tricked people into believing that you could own the earth, and so now that people think that it can be owned, they think they own a piece of it, which means the government, they can charge you for that. It's a twisted setup. I mean, I view the earth as a place I'm sharing space with. When you establish where you are, well, if people encroach on that, you've got the right to repel them from that area that you're in. This is the way it's always been through time immemorial. But it's this whole concept that we have of registration and government control of everything, and everything being regulated because of the way ownership is perceived. And when you come down to like owning your body, well, of course you own your body. You get all these spiritual New Age people say, oh, no, I'm just visiting. This is just on loan to me from God. Well, yeah, sure, okay, I can understand that perspective. But since it's on loan to you from God, perhaps you should be the one taking care of it and not letting other people make decisions about what happens to it. You can look at it from
taking
both angles,
full
you know
responsibility for the body and the actions that are done with it. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's your temple that was given to you on loan, sure, by God for this experience. But it's your temple. Look after the temple. It's yours. It's not anybody else's. It's
while
yours.
I'm inhabiting it, it belongs to me. It is my property while I'm inhabiting it. Yes. So
exactly.
So
yes.
Max.
So there's a whole weirdness with this whole ownership thing, but it's the government concept of ownership, which with registration and all of this sort of stuff.
They believe they own everything. You know.
And we've constructed these societies that are based on the mammon money. Everybody's got to pay to be alive. So everybody's put in an artificial state of scarcity, which means everybody's in competition for everybody else's piece of dirt. The whole thing's been contrived. It was never supposed to be that way. You know?
We've lost the idea of cooperation with each other, and we're put into this idea that everyone must compete with everybody else in this dog-eat-dog situation. And that's really the mindset of what Satanism is, which what I've been trying to explain to people. That's the religion that just about everybody on this planet, with few exceptions, have been inculcated into from the time that they were young. They've been taught a satanic worldview. They've been given a satanic mindset, and that's what makes them easy to rule. They can't be ruled unless they're actually in that satanic mindset.
Yeah, it's psychopathy. The thing is, like with the corporate system, I mean, there's an old movie that came out back in the 90s, I think, called The Corporation. You probably saw it, where they put a corporation on a hot psychiatric couch and they labelled it a psychopath. When you've got a psychopath who's in control of a company or in control of a government or in control of any organisation, the morality of the psychopath becomes the morality of the organisation he controls. And that organisation will search for that little spark of sociopathy, that little spark of darkness, that little spark of psychopathy that exists in almost everybody, and it will nurture that, and it will elevate that person to a position of power in the system. So you've got people working within psychopathic parameters simply because they're working to pay to be alive. And most people, like, they're working to their means. They think, well, I've got a job here. It's going to cost me $500 a week to live in this place. So I get this job. It's paying me a certain amount. I need a car to go there to the work. So I'm spending all of my money I'm making on the renting the home and on running the car in order to get to the job to come back to the home that I'm paying to rent that I'm never at. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. So we do it. We're just caught up in this whole thing of scarcity just so we can maybe skim enough off the top to be able to go and buy food to eat, you know. It's crazy.
Look at the justification.
It's purely psychopathic, the whole thing.
Look at the justifications that people will make to continue to support these psychopathic, vile, evil, and violent institutions. They'll make all these justifications. I have to do it to feed my family. Well, didn't the Nazis say, I need to go to work at the work camps to feed my family? Then they say, we're going to have to do these executions today because that's what pays the bills for me and my family. They were just as immoral. Like, we're just as immoral today, except it hasn't gone as hot, violent, just about, that it was in World War II, pre-World War II, and then after World War II in the Soviet situation of the communists in Russia. But look at all of the people who did these vile, evil things and complied with evil in the past, whether we're talking about the Red Chinese, whether we're talking about Mao Zedong, whether we're talking about the German Nazi Reich, whether we're talking about the Bolshevik Revolution or Stalinist communism, etc. It doesn't matter what evil regime we're talking about. It was filled and comprised of people who all made the same justification. This is what I have to do to feed my own family. This is what I am going to do to receive money so that I can live comfortably and so that the people that I care about in my immediate family can live comfortably. There is no justification or excuse if it doesn't matter what your intent is. This is the thing that I hear over and over and over again. People say to me, well, what about the person who swept up in a work camp? Or what about the person who is the bag man of the mafia? Right? All he does is take a briefcase of money and go to another headquarters. He takes it from one headquarters to the other to make a payoff. Right? People don't understand. It doesn't matter how low level you are in the organization. You could be a 5-star, general or admiral, all the way down to working clerical. It doesn't make a difference if you're pushing paperwork. You're helping the evil, and your intent is it's virtually meaningless. I'm not going to say intent is absolute meaningless. You can say there's a consideration, well, this is why this individual believes this. But it doesn't excuse the immoral behavior, and it doesn't excuse the complicity in the evil. It's just a justification for it. It's trying to turn it into a right. That's what justification means. It's something that attempts to turn a wrong into a right when that cannot actually be done. It does not matter what level of the hierarchy of power anybody is involved in. If you are working in a clerical capacity, meaning pushing paperwork, you are helping evil. If you're the bagman of a mafia, you're involved in helping the mafia get what they're doing done. If you are a person who is just doing their job in a hospital, and what's being done in the hospital are acts of eugenics, you are complicit. If you were one of the Germans sweeping up in a work camp or in a concentration camp, you are complicit. And this is what people have a hard time with. They want to make excuses for people and let them off easy. When what needs to be said to people is your intent and why you did it is not what creation is going to examine and look at. All it's going to look at is the behavior. It's not going to care why you did it. It's not. People confuse law in creation with this very human-like, anthropomorphized feeling thing, when what it is it's unwavering law. Gravity doesn't suddenly suspend itself in the universe because a 2-year-old toddler walks over the edge of a high cliff, of a 3,000-foot cliff, and goes splat. It continues to work the way it always works, unwaveringly and perfectly, and it allows the toddler to go splat because it can't put personal care into the situation and suddenly suspend the law just because a bad event is going to happen as a result of the law being in effect. So this is what people have to get out of their mind. Natural law doesn't work like me and you having a conversation and going, well, I normally will not be at this place on Saturday morning, and you're arriving then, and I can't ever make an exception. Well, I can make an exception to what I'm doing. I could cancel my plans. I can go there and let you in on Saturday morning. Human beings can make exceptions with each other for things that they need to do and get done. Natural law doesn't do that. There are no exceptions. It's rigidly, impersonally locked in absolutism. And that's what the ego has the hardest time with. The ego says, no, that can never be. That can't be because I don't want to think of anything as that cold and impersonal. And it wants to insist, no, creation would never put anything like that into effect. No, God is not structured like that, as rigid, cold, and impersonal law that works 100% of the time in an absolutist way, unwaveringly and flawlessly for eternity. But that is what creation's law is. It is not going to look at why you did something. It's not going to take your intent into consideration and say, I felt I had to do this to feed my family. That's what I was told. That's what I believed. All it's going to say is, did you allow your body to be used for the evil, to bring the evil into resultant manifestation in the three-dimensional space-time continuum that we call the manifested universe? Was or was not your body used for that evil and in complicity with that evil? And if the answer is yes, the consequence must come. We can still choose to do that through whatever reasoning, bullshit reasoning we have in our brain, whatever justification, whatever bullshit lie we want to tell ourselves. But creation is still going to deliver the consequence upon us. We can make that choice, we can break law, but we cannot escape the consequence of breaking it. And this is what the hard-headed and thick-headed among us still do not understand. And I feel that is what is our ultimate great work, is to get that through the thick-skulled among us and get them to realize moral law is an absolute. Moral law is objective. It is not a personal force. It's an impersonal force in place in creation, just like gravity, just like electromagnetism, etc. And if you attempt to violate it, you can choose to do so, but there will be consequence, like the 2-year-old going over the cliff and going splat. You are going to be held to account, whether in the 3D, outside the 3D, in the realm of pure consciousness, in the realm of the body, in some form. Karma will be in effect and have consequence over you. And people, the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'll turn it over to you, and we can go to the phones for the last couple minutes if you want, is the role of intent is not part of karma. People believe that this plays a big role in karma, but all you need to do is go back to the Sanskrit word. Karma literally means action. The word means action in the original language that it comes from. Do you think they would have named it action if behavior wasn't the main consideration, and if intent had a vast, large amount to do with it? Intent has the sliver of slivers on the top, less than the skin on pudding, okay? And then there's an ocean below it that is about action. Forget the intent. The intent is not what is creating the consequence. The action is. That's why we have to learn objective morality, align our behavior to it, teach it to others, and help them align their behavior to it as well. Max, your take on, what I just said there about karma and natural law.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Action is the goal. Action is the key. You might intend whatever, but if you put something in motion and it causes harm or damage, well, that's what counts. Doesn't matter what your intention is at all. You might intend for all sorts of funny things. Doesn't matter. It's what you do in your life. It's what you do that counts, which is why we do what we do. It's why I do what I do. I mean, yeah. And if more people looked at it that way, yeah, intention. I mean, it's all very new age. You might have deeper intentions with lots of things, but I don't know. Action is where it counts.
That's what defines us as beings, is the actions that we take in the world. The intent could be all internalized.
It's the lack of action. It's the lack of action that's brought us to this point, and wrong directions. Not the solution is not believing in ourselves. This whole thing I attribute to a loss of self.
That's right.
And the belief in ourselves and the action that we take. We're scared to take action because we don't believe in ourselves,
We somehow think we're powerless when we can be of such incredible power. It's all in our potential. We just have to unleash it by believing in ourselves. Max, let everybody know where they can find you, and then let's go to the phones for a few minutes for the duration of the show. Where can people find the body of your work?
The same place it's always been, thecrowhouse.com. Old HTML website, folks. Doesn't look good on a cell phone. That's just the way it goes. But I've been kicked off just about everywhere, but you'll still find me on BitChute and Odyssey. I've been meaning to get over onto your network. I've been very slack in that department. I've had so many, traveling and moving to Mexico and computer issues and bandwidth problems and
Well, listen, I'll tell you to that in that regard.